Hi, I'm Dana Durnford, also known as nuclearproctologist.org, and you can find my videos at Beautiful Girl by Dana on YouTube. Now, I have done 260 days on the Fukushima expeditions for life along the coastline of British Columbia. I was recently demonized by the Globe and Mail and by CBC. CBC, I gave them two 20-minute interviews, and they didn't even quote me. All he said was I wasn't a scientist. Yet I have 14,000 hours underwater and a history on the ocean itself, and that I've worked at every industry. I've ran over a dozen commercial dive vessels in British Columbia, Canada alone, and I have done every industry on both oceans of Canada. I've been at the ocean since 1975 to 2001 when I was injured in a diving accident after 128 days of diving open ocean, 6 hours a day on the ocean floor in British Columbia, Canada. So, 15 years have gone by. It's a long time. But then Fukushima had happened 4.5 years ago. And so what we done, we launched an expedition to go out and look at the coastline and do species counts. Now the Globe and Mail came out and demonized me repeatedly. And he demonized me because I talk about before pictures that you see expanding. I'll give you a full... So the pictures on this side of the computer, these pictures here are the before pictures. And what you're looking at right now is Louise Gnarls. And Louise Gnarls was part of the Expedition for Life, and we went out, that's in the Charlottes, Queen Charlotte's, by Skidegate. You see Arrow? Well, it's right in that Gnarls in behind Arrow, where that island is too. And so the water has to rush through there. It's an extremely coveted place. We've covered 15,000 miles of coastline. We've taken over 200,000 pictures of this coastline. Now the pictures here, the big ones I'm going to show you right now, are the ones I took. That is Louise Gnarls. And the pictures here are Louise Gnarls pre-Fukushima. Now pre-Fukushima, Louise Gnarls would have 70 bat stars per square yard in nearly every hue of the rainbow colors. And that's what you see in there, nearly 70 of them per square yard. And it would look like that at low tide. Now, at low tide, this was a 2-foot low tide. You can see there's no color left on the shoreline whatsoever. There's around 3,000 pictures at the nuclear proctologist of Louise Gnarls. Now, in the context, these pictures should be the same pictures throughout British Columbia, not just Louise Gnarls. Every spot of British Columbia should look that, and every rock in British Columbia should look at least like that, if not a whole lot of... at low tide, everything should look like this. So it's very important that you understand what was there before to understand what I'm going to tell you today. And this is so important because they might lock me up. They have me with 12 restrictions, so I can't talk about the people that are hoodwinking you. I'm not allowed to say their names, but the media came out and demonized me and said, what I'm showing you is not true. But yet we went up and took these pictures, and that I worked in this environment for most of my life, and that I have no reason to lie to you. I have nothing to gain by fabricating it. And so you can see how life was plentiful. And that's Louise Gnarls we're only talking about today. We're not going to try to include the entire coastline. We have storm force winds for the next couple of days. So I'm probably going to have to take my Zodiac. I'm probably going to have to take that Zodiac because the ferries won't be able to run in this weather. So I can get a couple of 100 miles down the coastline so I don't get arrested for telling the truth. So there's no doubt about it that everything possible can go wrong to stop the truth from coming out, and then the people that are lying about it have the platforms and are able to come out and demonize me, but I can't come out and defend myself against those people. I can't come out and have a conversation about the Globe and Mail per se about what they said about me. Now, just to put that in the context, the Globe and Mail is constantly selling uranium stocks in Canada. Can Japan recapture its coal? Well, this is where they were going to spend $405 million to make nuclear cool again. But nuclear just wiped out the entire coastline of Canada, like I've been showing you. Like all of Canada's like that. You can go to the nuclear proctologist and see the documentation. This is Louise Gnarls and the Queen Charlotte's. And so there's nothing left, only a little tiny bit of algae, a bit of slime. And in the context, right, it should be a very healthy, vibrant, Just the entire coastline. Everywhere you go on the coastline should look like that, not just Louise Gnarls. But we're using that because it's so far removed from civilization. It's so far removed from industry. It's so far removed from everything. And that we know that Japan really did have 3 melter reactors. And that we know Chernobyl was a candlestick compared to Japan. And we know the jet streams and ocean currents are real. And so this is before Japan's melter reactors. The entire coast, no matter where you went, would look like that. These are low tide shots of British Columbia. And now have a look at it. And if you tell me I shouldn't be upset by discovering this, I shouldn't be upset and lashing out in frustration because people are saying there's nothing wrong with it. And then the people that we turn to for real news are pushing the nuclear industry as hard as they can. Uranium stocks glow after Japan makes a nuclear U-turn. But Japan shut down the reactors because they wrecked the country. They destroyed the Pacific Ocean. They polluted Canada and America with radioactive fallout that's still ongoing. Growling sees a nuclear future. Tuesday analyst upgrades and downgrades. They're selling uranium stocks in the same paper. And there's comments where people are saying, the stock I'm looking at in uranium is Bayswater's Uranium Corpse. Of course, they cover Bayswater. This is Bayswater. That's the one you got to watch is what they say, right? But at the same time as they were putting out these headlines, there was a massive amount. See, they put out the headline, a weird one for now, all of these headlines showed up under Fukushima, uranium stocks. When you search Fukushima, all you get is uranium stocks and a scattered headline like this. Scientists are baffled by sea star goo? Really? They're baffled by the goo. There's no goo there because the starfish are all gone, all 78 species. 480 species of worms are gone. 76 species of sea anemones are gone. 70 species of sponges are gone. Over 5,600 highly visible species are gone. 600 algae are gone from the tidal zones. From pre-Fukushima. Pre-Fukushima, no matter where you went, there was a smorgasbord. Just give you some comparison photos, and we're going to jump back to that headlines. But that's what the sand would look like. You would see this kelp coral and these big, beautiful limpets. But now there's nothing there. There is no color there. It's void of any color. But somehow I'm a bad guy. There is no life there for the birds to feed on. And this looks like a recent picture, to tell you the truth. And that I do have pictures showing some of that, what you're seeing there. But the rest, this stuff here is missing completely throughout the coastline. There is only a handful of species left on the entire coastline. And I have no choice but to come out and say that this is devastating and that we have to act and act now. Look how the starfish would cover the entire coastline that was vacant. Anything that was left over was covered with starfish. I worked in this environment day after day, 300 days a year as a commercial diver. I'm not just a random person on the internet. We went out and done the entire coastline, and what we're showing you is just the very basics. You can see how naked the rocks are compared to what it was, where everything was covered with life. Everything was thriving everywhere you went, and now it's completely naked. And these pictures are all from Louise Gnarls. And there's around 3,000 pictures on my site. If you wanted to match up the pictures perfectly, you probably wouldn't have much of an issue because I covered that Gnarls inside out, non-stop, to the tune of around 3,000 pictures. And that it's all missing. Everything is missing. The whole habitat, the ecosystem, it's all missing. There's zero color. And that the bird, that picture I took there is nothing there for the bird to eat on that shoreline. That's the zodiac. There's nothing there. But when you look at the context of why I say those things, there's nothing there, it's because this is what it used to look like throughout the entire coastline of Canada. Every square inch was vying for life. But what really sets this apart is that if all of these species disappeared, yeah? Well, then 4 million species should cover this whole area immediately. There's 4 million other species. The species I'm showing you are the indigenous species. But they're all gone, and so the 4 million other species didn't fill up the gap. Right? The 4 million species did not fill up that gap. And I mean, just think about it, that there's nothing there. And we'll just run back through those pictures very quick because I was in that video. I didn't realize I was still in the video, but you can see, that's going backwards on these pictures. But there's 4,000 pictures or 3,000 pictures at my site. If you look up Marine Life, British Columbia, pre-Fukushima, these are the kinds of pictures you're going to find. No matter who took them, no matter where they were to. This was what the coastline looked like. Everywhere you went at low tide, urchins were out of the water. The entire coastline was like that. We've covered 15,000 miles of the coastline. This is what everything should look like. Obviously, it doesn't. The entire coastline is like that. I need major support. I need major help. I need people to put their back to the wall. And that's what they've done. Throughout this entire planet, people have come out to support me. And now, you know, in 2 days' time, I have to figure out how I'm going to get down there in gale force winds. And so I have a Coast Guard Zodiac, and I can get across and rent a car if I got to, but the ferries won't be running. And so, like, I am struggling non-stop for my freedom and the freedom of speech that has been taken away from me for telling you this. I've been vilified and demonized by the biggest media in Canada, telling us that there's nothing to worry about and that uranium miners need your help and that the ocean is fine repeatedly, and that they come out and they talk about how the nuclear watchdog recommended distributing iodine pills to those living near reactors as a precaution. Oh, but they can never have an accident, is what they say. If you have an accident in Canada, Canada's gone. That's the end of Canada. We proved this with Chernobyl. That's why we have terrorist laws, because like a pound of this stuff can kill everybody on the planet. 1,500 every 20 minutes will die. If you put them in a room in a theater with a pound of that stuff. And so these reactors detonated. These reactors all blew up. These reactors lost their complete inventory. These reactors all melted down. These reactors are many times the size of Chernobyl. Chernobyl was 1/3 the size. Chernobyl stopped after 10 days, and Chernobyl was equal to 400 Hiroshima bombs. Japan's didn't stop, so what are they equal to? If Chernobyl is equal to 410 days, Hiroshima bombs, what is Japan equal to? 3 times the size. And Japan had spent fuel pools on the roof. But here's Canada, the biggest media, pumping uranium stocks and not telling anybody anything about what happened. They're not telling about the mass die-offs. They're not showing these pictures. They're not saying that I have this documentation. They're not telling that whole story. Right? They're set up on me to silence me. They're set up on me to stop me from disseminating the carnage. Like, and just to end this video off, California shuts down commercial crabs. Make sure I'm actually streaming. They're on that. So crabs are gone. They're blaming it on toxins or dioxins. Avoiding radiation. Marine mammal strandings are 10 times worse than ever seen before. 3 years of babies have crashed and burned. This is mainstream media aggregated at a site. 10 giant whales found dead in the Pacific. They were krill feeders. The krill are missing. 13 baby gray whales and 55 dolphins. You know, volunteers were trained about dangers of radiation. Fears for whales encountering radioactive hotspots. There will be no whales in less than 2 years if they live that long. They're all gone. Shock as the sardines vanish off California. Fishermen didn't find a single one all summer. Canada never got none. The young aren't reproducing. Waters offshore are lacking in anchovies, sardines, and squid. Southern California fishermen were skunked, haven't even seen a squid. Record numbers of 6 sea lions. Pelicans, 20,000 of them only laid a dozen eggs. Ultra rare whales, after decades, appeared mammals, birds, and fish in odd places. But the sardine population plummeted. They're the backbone of birds, and mammals, and animals along the coastline. The bird population has completely disappeared throughout British Columbia, Canada. Complete collapse of the sardine population around Western Vancouver, 2013, 2014, 2015. A total fail, never even got a sardine. Marine birds disappearing completely. Hearing problems may be far worse than revealed. Mind-blown die-offs of seabirds, unprecedented. But at the same time, these headlines were coming out. I was out there doing expeditions, And the Globe and Mail was out there selling uranium stocks, talking about how fish pellets could show up but not radiation, how they can come up with billions of dollars, millions of dollars to clean up debris from the tsunami, but nobody was allowed to go look for it. Only the apologists who didn't go into the tidal zones like I done, who didn't go to the tidal pools like I did, who didn't show you the marine species, who didn't use a marine biologist, who didn't even look at the tidal zones. But they find a boat, no problem, they'll tell you about that, but they don't bother mentioning radiation. No turnaround in sight for those guys or the uranium miners. And that they pumped out stocks repeatedly for Cigar Lake in British Columbia, Canada, and all of that, or that Globe and Mail is selling stocks and goes over to Japan to TEPCO. And that is the biggest betrayal imaginable. Through the academics and through journalism, the Globe and Mail has sold us out. And then they vilified me and stabbed me in the back and hung me out to dry. And then the next day they were pumping out uranium stocks again. So at what point are we going to try to have a conversation about this? When it's too late to save the Pacific Ocean, and it's too late to save the species on the coastline of Canada, and that we have to come and have a conversation. We can't keep pretending it's not happening. We can't pretend there's not an extinction event. But you can see it's mind-numbing how many stocks Globe and Mail sold, but they won't tell you about what I'm doing. They won't tell you about the headlines that at the same day they put out the headlines, these headlines were coming out. Die off of birds all over Alaska Beach, floating in the Pacific, starving, deformed and abnormal animals reported. Spikes and rescues, they're starving to death. It will never be resolved. Fukushima disasters to go on indefinitely, but they're trying to pump stocks out and demonize me and had me arrested and vilified throughout Canada, and I can't even come out and defend myself. I can't come out and say that's a lie because otherwise, hang on. Hey, buddy. Hey. Okay. Just 1 second, Raj. Hang on. Okay, folks, take care, folks. And we're heading down to Victoria to Morrill. And it's going to be storm force winds. And so whatever it takes, we're going to show up. But look what I'm up against. All I'm doing is telling the truth. All they do is sell uranium stocks at the Globe and Mail. Use some common sense. Please support me. You'll find links below how to do that. An amazing amount of supporters already showed up. And that now is the time to really push back. I'm pushing back with everything I got. Please help me any way you can. Hugs for everybody. Take care, folks.